Hey guys, Experimental Betty here, and I wanted to talk about why I don't eat chocolate anymore. If you're following me for a while, then you know my Instagram feed used to be full of peanut butter and chocolate. And I won't talk about peanut butter in this video because it's a whole other thing, but I did want to talk about why I don't eat chocolate anymore. The number one thing is that chocolate is kind of dirty. So unless you're getting your chocolate from a really reliable source, you're probably getting really low quality chocolate. And the reason I say that is because I was watching videos the other day on how to ferment chocolate because I wanted to try and ferment my own using bacteria that actually are beneficial for your histamine levels instead of actually contributing to high histamine levels. And the video was a cocoa bean farmer, and he was taking the viewer through the process of what they do to the beans, how they ferment them and how they dry them. And they actually just ferment them in giant, dirty, disgusting crates, wooden crates that you could see the nastiness on the crates. And it's wild fermentation. So they're doing it in a big room that is in an open crate. The crate only had 3 sides, so it's open to the air. So you have wet cocoa beans just fermenting, or cacao beans just fermenting in this bin, being exposed to all kinds of bacteria. Not only that, but then they just dry them in the sunlight, which sounds really cool and earthy, but let's get real. They're just exposing it to everything. And then at the end, the guy was sorting them into different piles, and he points at the first pile and he says, "This is the trash pile, but the buyer will still purchase them. They'll just be considered low quality." Guys, if you don't know the quality of the chocolate that you're eating the trash pile of cacao beans. That's probably the number one reason that I don't eat chocolate, is because I would have to make my own, which I have before. I do have a great recipe for keto chocolate on my blog, experimentalbetty.com, and I use a reputable source of cacao. But I've only found one reputable source of cacao powder, and that's bulletproof, and you can't just go to the grocery store and get it in most places. The second reason that I don't eat chocolate is because of copper to zinc ratio. So you want to have a copper to zinc ratio that is somewhere between 0.7 to 1.0. You can't really measure this directly through any labs in the US, at least not that I'm aware of. So what you have to do is order serum copper, serum ceruloplasmin, and plasma zinc. And then you have to do a calculation that gives you a copper to zinc ratio, and then you do a calculation that gives you a bioavailable copper number. And then you can determine if you have normal, high, or low copper to zinc ratio. So a lot of women actually have high copper to zinc ratio, and a very high percentage of women with depression and anxiety have a high copper to zinc ratio. If you have anxiety or depression and you're a woman and you first started noticing symptoms after a big hormonal shift or after pregnancy, then it's probably related to a high copper to zinc ratio. And part of the reason it affects women more than men is that copper and estrogen have a very high affinity for each other. And women's bodies are more easily or more susceptible to environmental stress, which isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing that we're sensitive, but there are things that you have to take into consideration. Chocolate is higher in copper than it is zinc, and it can contribute to high copper to zinc ratio. Now, high copper to zinc ratio is not a diagnosis in and of itself, but if you have high copper to zinc ratio and you don't address it and balance it, then you will be susceptible to illness, and you will never permanently heal from illness. There will always be that imbalance and that susceptibility. Eating chocolate is not something that I would recommend if you're concerned about high copper to zinc ratio, which I am. I have balanced my copper to zinc ratio, but it took me a long time to do it. It took several months, and then when I got sick again, it got out of balance again, and I had to rebalance it. Copper is also a higher lectin food than some other things. It's not a low lectin food by any means. So that also contributes to copper to zinc imbalance, because lectins will block the absorption of zinc. But it also contributes to autoimmune reactions. So if you're somebody who has an autoimmune disorder, even if it's just like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, eating a diet high in lectins is probably not the best idea. Chocolate is not going to be on the list of foods for low lectin foods. Another issue with chocolate is that it is high histamine because it is a fermented food. So if you have histamine intolerance, chocolate's probably not going to be the best thing for you. So to recap, the reasons I don't eat chocolate would be: 1, cacao beans are usually really dirty. The way that they're processed is just not something that is conducive to good health. And number 2, it's not conducive to a healthy copper to zinc ratio, especially if you're a woman. Number 3 is that it's not a low lectin food, so it's not conducive to healing from autoimmune disease. Number 4, it is going to be an issue if you have histamine intolerance. So these are all things that can be overcome if you really want to eat chocolate. I don't like to be a fearmonger, and I don't like to talk about a problem without giving a solution. The best solution I found is Carob powder. It does have a slightly higher carbohydrate content than cacao does, but it is lower in lectins, and it doesn't have the same issue with copper to zinc imbalance because it is lower in lectins. That's the best solution I have found. If you are following Body Harmony eating and you're muscle testing poorly to cacao, try muscle testing to Carob powder and see what happens. Now, you can't really buy Carob chips in the store. They will have probably milk fat, milk protein, and they may even have added sugar. So the best thing to do is to make fat bombs with Carob powder, or to make homemade keto chocolate using Carob powder. And I have recipes for that on my blog, experimentalbetty.com. If you found this helpful, slap a like on this video, drop a comment, share it, subscribe. If you want to learn more about Body Harmony eating, it's something that I teach my self-healers to do in my gut healing program as well as my self-healer program. And it is also a part of your Biotype Protocol program. So if those things interest you, reach out to me at selfhealercoach.com, or check out the curriculum of these programs at theselfhealerinstitute.com. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can catch me on Instagram at experimental_Betty. And if you're watching this on Instagram, you can see more videos like this on my YouTube, Experimental Betty.